So let's talk about May 10th, 1994. On that day, Nelson Mandela stood before the world, not just as a president, but as a living symbol of liberation. And his inauguration speech, it wasn't just a political address. It was this incredible lesson in courage, freedom, and what it really means to be human. So what we're going to do is use his own powerful words to dive into the deep insights from that truly historic day.
So the date is May 10th, 1994. A beautiful, clear autumn day in South Africa. I mean, just try to picture it. After a whole lifetime of struggle, after nearly 3 decades locked away in a prison cell, Nelson Mandela was about to become the first democratically elected president of a new, free nation.
And with these simple words from his inaugural address, Mandela declared freedom. You can just feel it, right? That collective sigh of relief, the absolute triumph of a people who had finally broken the chains of a brutal system. This was it. This was the moment.
Okay, so what did this victory actually look like? Well, the ceremony itself was this stunning symbol of the new South Africa, a rainbow gathering, as Mandela so beautifully put it.
Okay, so the scene is the Union Buildings in Pretoria. And the guest list, it was just wow, unprecedented. We're talking about the largest gathering of international leaders ever on South African soil. And you got to understand, these weren't just politicians showing up. They were witnesses to the birth of a nation's conscience, its very first democratic, non-racial government.
And this right here, this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. See, for decades, this exact spot, the Union Buildings, had been the cold, stone center of white supremacy. But on this one day, that entire history was washed over by this vibrant, living rainbow of different colors and nations, all there to celebrate a shared victory for justice and for human dignity.
And this just perfectly shows you how radical that shift really was. Mandela himself pointed out the incredible irony. The very same military generals who, not that long ago, would have been the ones to arrest him, were now saluting him, their chests covered in medals, pledging their loyalty to democracy. I mean, can you even imagine? It's an unbelievable turn of events.
But, to really get why that day was so incredibly joyful, we have to look back. We have to understand the profound pain of the past and the brutal system they had just managed to overthrow. And that system was apartheid, a political structure built from the ground up on racial discrimination. Mandela himself described it as creating one of the harshest, most inhumane societies the world had ever seen.
He called it an extraordinary human disaster. He said the policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in his country and in his people. A kind of profound hurt that he knew would take generations, if not longer, to heal.
And just think about the timescale for a second. This whole system of racial domination, it was built way back in the first decade of the 20th century. It took almost an entire century for it to finally be torn down and replaced by an idea that should be simple, but was totally radical at the time. That all people have rights, no matter what color their skin is.
But here's the thing. Out of all that unbelievable suffering, something unexpected also grew. Decades of oppression forged an extraordinary kind of character, and a really deep understanding of what courage even is. It's this strange paradox that Mandela himself thought a lot about. He actually suggested that maybe it takes those kinds of depths of oppression to create such incredible heights of character, wisdom, and generosity.
And he made sure to honor the patriots who paved the way, Giants of the struggle, like Oliver Tambo, who was the brilliant strategist that led the ANC from exile. And then there was the wise, steadfast Walter Sisulu, his mentor. And look, these were just 2 of the countless others whose suffering and courage, Mandela said, could never, ever be repaid.
People like Yusuf Tadu, Mandela really felt like he was simply the sum of all those African patriots who'd come before him. He was just pained that they couldn't be there to see what all their sacrifices had finally accomplished.
And this is maybe one of the most important things he learned from all of them. For Mandela, courage wasn't about not being afraid. That's not it at all. He had seen men pushed to their absolute limits, tortured without breaking. And from them, he learned that true courage is the triumph over fear. The brave people, they aren't fearless. They're the ones who conquer that fear.
And it was this belief, this faith in the human spirit that really kept him going. He remembered that even in the absolute darkest times in prison, seeing just a glimmer of humanity in a guard, even for a split second, was enough to reassure him that human goodness is like a flame. You can hide it, for sure, but you can never, ever put it out.
Now, this kind of understanding, it didn't just happen overnight. Mandela's whole idea of what freedom even meant, it changed and grew throughout his entire life.
So his idea of freedom wasn't this fixed thing. It evolved. As a boy, hey, freedom was simple, running in the fields. As a student, it was those transitory freedoms, right? Staying out late, reading what you want. As a young man, he just wanted those basic, honorable freedoms to earn a living and raise a family. But then it started to dawn on him that all of this was kind of an illusion, as long as his people weren't free. And that's when this totally new, much deeper hunger was born, not just for his own freedom, but for the freedom of everyone.
And this was the big turning point. He realized there was no way he could enjoy his own little bits of freedom while his people were still in chains. He finally understood this profound truth. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me.
Which brings us full circle, right back to that inauguration speech, where he laid out what was probably his most radical and, honestly, his most hopeful vision for the future.
During that speech, he made this incredibly powerful pledge, a promise to the whole world, really, that this beautiful land would never, never, and never again experience the oppression of one person by another.
But then he took it a step further, with an idea that was, wow, truly revolutionary. He basically argued that freedom isn't some zero-sum game. In fact, he said, the oppressor needs to be liberated just as much as the oppressed.
And his reasoning here is just so profound. See, a person who takes away someone else's freedom, they become a prisoner themselves, a prisoner of hatred, locked up behind the bars of their own prejudice. In his view, both of them are robbed of their humanity. And that really leaves us with a huge, challenging question to think about. If real liberation means freeing the oppressor from their hate, what does that tell us about what our own freedom really is?